Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. I hope that you are all well. This is where I talk about the books that I'm reading. I like to read diverse books and I highlight Canadian literature. If you are new, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I hauled in October. I know we're near the end of November. I have a pile of new books, and I'm also going to be sharing a number of author events that I attended, which were great fun. And as always, I'm going to start with books that I received from publishers. So I'm going to begin with the book that I received from Highwater Press and ZG Stories, and that is In Search of April Raintree. This is by Beatrice Mosionier. I don't know if I'm saying the last name correct or not. This is the 40th anniversary edition, and I've read this before. It was on my reading list for children's literature when I was in university, and I had never read a book like this, and it had a huge impact on me. It has also had a huge impact on many of my favorite Indigenous writers living in Canada, and on Canadian literature in general. There are blurbs from some of my favorite authors, Sherry DeMoline, David Robertson, Rosanna Deerchild, and then the foreword is by Katarina Vermette, who I have mentioned many times on my channel. There's also a blurb from Marie Sinclair, who is a Canadian icon and was the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. And this book was the first book that I remember reading that was a Métis story about young women, two sisters, who were not far from my age at the time, and the horrible things they endured when they were taken from their family. How they deal with their situations differently, and the strong bond that the sisters have. This story has just always stayed with me, and I'm looking forward to rereading it. It's been, almost 30 years to just kind of see what I get from it now that more time has passed. The next book is a biography that I received from ZG Stories and Between the Lines books. It was just published on November the 7th, and it's called Beryl, The Making of a Disability Activist. This is by Dustin Gaylor. And this book follows the story of Beryl Potter, who was a working class mother of 3. And after an accident, a harmless slip and fall, Beryl's life changed forever. Over the course of 6 years, doctors tried to save her life. She lost her eyesight and her limbs one by one. She lost nearly half of her body. She lost her home, her husband, and financial security. And Beryl survived over 100 surgeries, a dangerous opioid addiction, and several suicide attempts. She also devoted her life to bettering the lives of other people with disabilities by raising awareness about disability from the 1970s to the 1990s. I have been teaching about people like Beryl this term, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about her and her activism. Thank you again to ZG Stories, to Highwater Press, and to Between the Lines books for these new reads. Now, I still have more books to tell you about, but I also want to tell you about the author events that I attended in October. Calgary hosted Wordfest. This is the literary festival, and I attended a few events. I wasn't able to go to as many as I had hoped, but the events that I did go to were really good. So on October the 11th, I went to the event called The Oracles. It was with Lorna Crozier and Michelle Good. They were being interviewed by Sheila Rogers, who, for Canadians and fans of CBC, Sheila Rogers is a legend. Michelle Good, of course, is mostly known for her novel Five Little Indians. It has won several awards. I have talked about it on my channel many times. And then her most recent book is nonfiction, and that is Truth Telling. And this is a collection of essays that I'm hoping to read soon. And I think I already talked about this book when I first hauled it, but perhaps not, I'm not sure. And then Lorna Crozier was a new writer to me, and I've never read anything by her. She read from her newest poetry collection called After That, and these are poems that she wrote when her husband was dying, and some of them are so powerful. She read several of them, probably 6 or 7, I would say. Some of them are also funny and quirky, and I had to get a copy. So many of you know I like grief as a theme, and I think this collection is going to be very impressive. The next event I attended was the Leacockians. I did a video not too long ago about the book prize that no one talks about, but this was a panel of authors who were going to talk about it. I will leave a link below to the video that I did. So this panel had 4 authors who have either won the Stephen Leacock Award for humor or have been shortlisted. So the author I knew the least about was Ali Bryan. However, I had heard of her book Cook, which I picked up and had her sign. This is a story about a family taking a trip to Paris. And then Amy Jones is an author that I've heard a little bit more about, but I've never read. And I believe I even put some of her books on my list for reading across Canada this year. I picked up Pebble and Dove by Amy Jones. And this is also a story about a family. They are pretty much falling apart, and it's about how a 1,000-pound aquatic animal brings them all together again. So that does sound like it has some potential for some humor. Another author that I have mentioned many times is Will Ferguson, who is a local author and has won the Leacock Award a few times. I have about 7 or 8 of his books sitting on my shelf, still waiting to be read. Sorry, Will. I added to that number at this event by picking up I Only Read Murder, which he wrote with his brother Ian Ferguson. They wrote this book during the pandemic, and Will described it as Murder, She Wrote meets Charlie's Angels meets The Littlest Hobo, which I thought was just a great description. I do hope to read it soon. I have to read this author before the end of the year would be amazing, but regardless, I am definitely making Will Ferguson a priority for 2024. The last Leacock Award winner was Terry Fallis. I finally had the opportunity to meet Terry in real life. We had a nice chat, and we had met before online when he joined my book club for a discussion of one of his books. And that was during the pandemic. And his most recent book, this is his 9th book, called A New Season. I am currently reading this, as Terry will be joining me and members of my channel who are part of the Reading Across Canada book club online. Terry will be joining us on November the 30th. So if you are interested in being part of that conversation, that discussion, you can become a Maple Leaf Bookworm or Canuck Bibliophile, and you will receive the link and all of the information to join in. So since all of these authors are considered humor writers, there were a lot of laughs. It was just a great event. And to kick it off was comedian and author Dave Hill. Now, I have to say that his humor, his timing is impeccable. He had all of us laughing so hard before the show even started, and then it just continued. And I have his book, Parking the Moose, on my shelves, which, you know, just from the title, I'm sure will be humorous. He's written, I think, 3 or 4 other books as well. So if you are looking for some lighter, more humorous reads, then these are authors that you might consider checking out. They also mentioned Nora Ephron, who I like, Miriam Taves, who I like, and Susan Juby as authors to check out. So I still need to read Susan Juby, so she is on my list. The next event that I attended was the Stygian collection. For many of you, you already know about this. Holly Rhiannon and Pavio started a small publishing press called the Stygian Society, and their first project was the Stygian collection, and it includes short stories from over 20 authors from BookTube and AuthorTube, including me. So while Pay and Holly were in Calgary in October, the Owl's Nest, which is one of Calgary's independent bookstores, great spot to check out, they hosted an event for us, and we had a great crowd. We read our stories or poetry, and we had the opportunity to talk about the project and writing and the Stygian Society. And it was so fun to get to meet Pay and Holly in real life too. I really enjoyed visiting with them and getting to know them a bit. All of my videos have a link where you can buy this collection, so it will be in the description box below. Okay, I have two more author events to talk about. The next one took place at the university where I work, and David Chariandy came and talked about Black Canadian literature, and in particular his book Brother. He talked about 5 distinct things about Black Canadian literature. The myth of absence, so the myth of thinking there is no significant Black population, which is silly. And then the myth of Canadian colorblindness, which is this idea that Canadians do often think, oh, racism doesn't happen in Canada, and that is so not true. He talked about multiculturalism and EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion. He talked about the diaspora or diasporas, and finally he talked about the present urgencies and renewed Black and Indigenous relations. So he has a very gentle approach about him, and yet what he's talking about is so important. I had him sign my book Brother, and also the book I've been meaning to tell you that he wrote for his daughter, which I absolutely loved as well. So after the event, when I chatted with David, I asked about what he was working on next, and he didn't give me permission to share it. I didn't ask, so I'm just going to be cautious. But I will say that I have a feeling it's going to be incredible, and I cannot wait to read it. Last but certainly not least, on October the 30th, I went to see Waubgeshig Rice talk about Moon of the Turning Leaves, which is his newest book and the sequel to Moon of the Crusted Snow. The plan, I may have mentioned this before, the plan was to have read Moon of the Turning Leaves before the event. However, I committed to buddy reading this with Danny from Danny Dabbles, and I did not realize that the US had a different publishing date, and the US date is not until next year. So I am waiting to read this with Danny next year, and what I might do is reread Moon of the Crusted Snow in preparation, because it has been a little while since I finished that book, so this way I'll just go right into the story. And this is a dystopian story, and I love the setup of it, and it is just always great to hear Waub talk about his writing and his book and his books. Waub is an author that I think is a really important voice for all people living in Canada. He's definitely an author that I will buy and read anything that he writes. So those are some new books and author events that I attended in October. Please let me know if you have read any of these books, if you are interested in any of these, the books in particular, or any of the authors. And then please let me know who is an author that you've met and had a positive experience, or that you would like to meet if given the opportunity. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.